Great. Quick question for the survey. How did you deal with dirty data? I noticed like one of the charts, there were a couple data points that had zero salary. So I was just curious how you dealt with the dirty data.
For me personally, it was pretty much manual. I went through it and looked, either sort on each of the columns and see which ones were there or missing. Some missing data isn't always bad, so I left a lot of that in, or I changed it to something if it didn't like whatever I was using for a tool. If it didn't like missing data, I would put in like a question mark or something so that it was its own class. But there was plenty of other things. Most of the column names in the CSV were the actual question names, so even Excel would not load up the CSV. Right, we had to do a lot of things in there. MySQL hated it. There was a lot of stuff in there. Nobody liked that there were quotes inside the quotes, that there were commas inside quoted fields. All the things that you're supposed to be able to do with CSV. Most of the tools I tried didn't really like that. So we had to deal with that. One of the other things that was in there were questions that had multiple select. You could select multiple things, like what is your job type? Are you web developer, full stack, and UX, and so on? Like check all that apply. And for a number of the different either charts or and for machine learning techniques and data mining, a lot of times you want them out in their own thing. Like, are you a web developer, full stack? Yes or no. Are you a UX engineer? Yes or no. And then so we had most of us had our own version of the script that would break those out into their own columns, so that you can do correlations based on the individual answers. I did get them all into a Postgres database so that I could use arrays there. So that was the only place I could ever really bundle them. But otherwise, it was just an explosion of data. It was like, something like 170 columns or something when it was all said and done. But yeah, it's a good point though. I mean, this is one of these things is you don't just throw this into Excel or Google Forms and out pops the graphs. Like the data's dirty, and you got to just clean it and get rid of the things. There were people that I can't remember what it was which tool was it? It was something inappropriate, but the answer was your mom. So didn't necessarily put that on the graph or anything like that. But there was some visual inspection to be done as well, and that was probably the dirtiest data. That one.
That was great. Next question.
So I have two questions. First, does compensation only include salary, or was there anything about like stock options or other benefits?
The questions, there was the actual salary one, which was supposed to be just base, because there were other questions that were just kind of a check all that apply. How much, would you get? Was there one for the 401k and for other bonuses? Was there only one question that said, check all of these that you get. I saw the one that said they can get massages, and there was gym memberships and 401ks and everything. They might have been all in that one question. What didn't get in there was your net salary, and that might be a good question, right? What's your gross salary, just straight up base, and then what is your max? What's on your? Give me your W-2. And
I don't know if that's the question.
I don't think that's right.
So close. But yeah, so there was another question like that, but it didn't factor into any of these charts that you saw.
Okay, and my second question was, did you see if there was any correlation between the languages and their like average salary and the average years of experience with those languages?
Did you go there? I didn't break it down. That was the thing. There was so much that could have been done given a lot more time. That was definitely one of them, and I think that might have even come up earlier, was having that one extra level deep, right? As you can see the bar chart, and then just to be able to break that into two more things, or one more category of less than a year experience versus more, because inside them, you will see their own the stuff that contributes to the average. So it's really tough to look at the first order summary statistics, because you can tell some trends. But then all it does is make you hungrier for more to know, and sooner or later you're just right there, and you might as well just look at the data.
That probably clears up Objective C.
Oh, yeah, you think so?
Yeah.
Oh, for years experience, that makes sense, yeah. Because you're probably not going to find a lot of the 30 plus years.
Well, you won't find a lot of 30 plus years, but the people who are still doing Objective C are probably more likely to have been doing it for a longer time. So they're the people on the upper echelon of iOS, but they're probably still doing Objective C work, because unless the project was started on average in the last 2 years, probably conservatively, it still has Objective C. So people are probably migrating it to Swift over the course of that. But I would say most of those people were tenured in Objective C. That's probably where it came from.
Thank you.
And before I do your question, I just wanted to give it like a hard stop at around 8:55, because then we have another quick thing we're going to do after this, and then we all get out of here. So we got about max 15 minutes of this. So succinct questions, succinct answers, please.
Thank you. It's more like a suggestion. If for the next survey you could also ask them, so your salary is X amount, but how many hours per week do you work? Because you could work 70, you can make, let's say, 75,000, and if you're working 40 hours, that is much more than if you're working 60 hours on average. So I think that's sometimes when you go to an interview and you're expecting 40 hours, but then they say, well, you're going to be working 50, that really is going to reduce how much money you're going to be making per hour. And also I think that beneficial would be to know things like, are you salaried? Are you hourly? Because are you going to be eligible for overtime? And lately, something that I've been seeing more and more is non-competes. I think when it comes to salary offer, I think it's important, and it's something that I wanted to ask you for the employers is, do you also compute that into the offer that you're making to the candidate? Because if you're going to offer 75,000 per year, but it's an exclusive agreement where everything that you do on your own time is transferred to the company, you're basically hiring my brain 24/7, and I think that should be somehow negotiated, right? If more of my time is belonging to you in and out of work, I think, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
So we actually asked all of those questions, and there are, if you scroll way to the bottom of the blog post, you see all of them there. What we didn't do is correlate, money, how much money you make versus hours worked. So that'd be interesting to know. The other thing is, it's interesting that you brought up the non-compete thing, but from my perspective, I've been a developer, and I think I might be curious on employers and just, you're all super seasoned professionals as well, so I'd be curious, but except for Alex, apparently. I would never accept an offer for somebody that will literally wouldn't let me work on anything else. I have more options. I have more people willing to hire me. You know what I mean? I've been around for long enough that if somebody comes up with me with that kind of agreement, like, hey, you're going to work here, I'm going to pay you this. I don't care if it's 75 or 750. I wouldn't accept that. So that's my perspective. Do y'all agree? Have you ran into that from a hiring end or from an employee end? What do you think?
So personally, I have signed a non-compete, but it was specific to actually competing with the company that I was working for.
Yes.
It's not, we don't own all your time inside or outside of work. It's don't go build a product to compete with us.
Exactly. Good point.
So, also, we do have a chart on salary by hours per week. I don't know if it made the blog post or not, but the highest median salary was actually the 41 to 50 hours per week, and the highest average salary was 61 plus. But in terms of your average, your median salary, which is right in the middle of the distribution, 41 to 50 was where it's at, which was interesting. More hours didn't necessarily help you beyond that.
Great points. Cool.
Hold on a second.
I'll answer that part, the last part on the own everything that you do. You'll see that, and I guarantee you, probably every single employment contract you've ever signed, if you go back and look at it. And it's basically a safety net for the company. They're not going to spend the time going after you over, oh, you went and worked for this guy, and you built this website. They generally don't care. What they care is if you take a modification of something that they did, they can claim it if they want it. Almost every single company is going to do it. The exact same thing you see is with Facebook, with React. If you haven't noticed their BSD license, same thing. That's why actually my team's not using React, because we're getting into something that we have some patents filed, and if we ever got into a dispute with Facebook, we wouldn't want to lose any valuation because of it. So
makes perfect sense. Did that answer all your questions? Cool, sweet.
So I guess I have a two-tier question, probably for Austin and Alex. So first question would be, what do the hiring managers use to come up with a range for positions that they're hiring for? What resources? And then the other question is, if they can't fill a position, after a certain amount of time, do they raise those expectations or their budget for that?
For me, and I'll try to keep it succinct so Alex can answer too. For me, I try to look at the median salary across the country. I have a own cost of living metric that I use to look at and kind of see where that falls. As far as the range, I always have a pretty ridiculously large range technically on the position because of finance, so budgeting reasons. But I hire based on, my salary offers are based on three things. What a reasonable expectation is for you as far as a pay bump, because believe it or not, when people make a big, large jump, then they think they can make another large jump and make that same pay bump, and that's not always the case. The second avenue is I look at your long-term growth potential. So if you're pretty stuck on one thing and you're, kind of, you don't take the extra bounds to grow, or you've kind of maxed out at one thing and you're very particular on still doing that, then the long-term value that you presented yourself as, in my opinion, goes down. And then the third one is just your basic years of experience, all that stuff kind of goes into there.
So caveat, I don't really deal with the specific finance negotiation part of it internally, but I know that we use pay scale and salary, and I think we use one other tool as well. There's like a whole employer side of that where you can do this, by the way, for yourself. You can go in there, you can select how large is your company, you can select what city you're in, get really quite granular in terms of defining you and your particular role and your language and all of that stuff. And you can get a pretty good range like that. And we use those as a ballpark. And then there was another part of your question.
Yeah, if you can't fill the position, do you guys raise that budget?
We're thankfully small enough that we can be a little bit nimble about salary. So, as you grow, those sorts of things get harder to be able to go to finance and say, hey, look, we need, you don't want to lose someone by $5,000 if they're amazing.
I don't think that's what he's saying.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's saying like you have a candidate who needs $5,000.
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
He's saying if you don't find anybody, do you then advertise the bump up?
Well, the trick with that is usually don't really publish at the front load of things like what the salary range is for a particular position. It's usually at the end, which I think is maybe a slightly unfortunate artifact of the hiring experience, but setting that aside, it's we try to be flexible, I guess, is the answer from PowerDMS perspective.
Thank you. Next question. We do not have that much time left. Cool.
So kind of what is a good baseline like for what you should expect if someone's going to give you a signing bonus? Like,
I've never done that, so I can't answer that question, to be honest.
I don't think signing bonuses are incredibly common in Orlando to begin with. I've never gotten offered one.
Yeah, I think maybe things like relocation fees and things like that are much more common. I'm not sure if that's a general development thing. As I said, I'm not super qualified to speak on these things. So.
Okay, and one more question.
Real quick on the signing bonuses thing. It is like these guys mentioned. It is pretty uncommon. I've only ever gotten one, and it was like $5,000, and it was part of a moving package as well.
Right.
So, I
do have a good story, actually.
Oh, okay.
This is worth it.
I promise this is worth it, Sergio. So back in the day, PowerDMS, small, scrappy startup, started in actually, what's that city called? Brooksville. You guys familiar with Brooksville? No? Exactly. So it started out there. Josh Brown, the CEO, started hacking away, working at a sheriff's department. The first developer that he signed, Heath, he gave him a signing bonus. His signing bonus was a truck. So there you go.
Yeah, and one more question. Between, I know it'll vary a lot depending on the position, but between like LinkedIn, resume, portfolio, like GitHub account, like which ones do you look at the most or the least when looking at applicants?
Go for it, but I was going to bring this up anyways.
Yeah. So what do I put the most emphasis on when hiring? For me, no question, if you have a good GitHub portfolio, if I can see your code, your commit history, I'm going to pay attention to that the most. But let's be real, like we have day jobs. Some of us are working 60 hours a week. Not everyone has time for that. Most of the applicants that I get don't have much of a GitHub or any kind of public portfolio. Mine kind of sucks, to be honest. Thankfully, I'm not looking for a job at the moment. So for me, it's kind of like a hierarchy, right? I'm going to take that if I can get it. I'm going to put less emphasis on things like the sort of trivia type questions in a phone screen, like, what is double equals versus triple equals in JavaScript, right? Like, okay, you should probably know that, by the way, if you are a JavaScript developer, but it's not that big of a deal if you don't know it, if you're great in every other way and you have a great GitHub portfolio. So that's the way I look at it.
So,
Try to be quick, please.
Yeah.
I've got one more question.
yep. So, a couple of things, I'll do this quickly, that I've been looking at lately. First of all, I look at everything anybody sends me. Like, if you're going to take the time to put it down, I'm going to take the time to look at it, which means that everything that you put down should be relatively strong. I noticed that a lot of people here are first-time people, and I've interviewed over 230. I've done over 230 interviews since February. If you're a junior, particularly like if you come from one of the boot camps, whatever kind, and you put in your GitHub and you have your class projects, but they're from April of whenever you finish your class, like 6 months ago or November or whatever, do something. Have something that's active. If you're not working and you're a dev and you don't have a current dev job, do something that's active so we can see that you're still interested. Because at the time that you learned something in the dev world 6 months ago in a coding boot camp, you're already behind again. You got to keep going. So that's the number one trend that I've seen among juniors that are doing it is if you're not working full time, as far as the dev goes, you have to make time if you want a dev job with like recent code.